All right. Well, hello and welcome to COVID Culture here on Wednesday, July the 22nd. With me today is Mary-Ann Kirkby, author, public speaker, singer, so many things. Thank you so much, Mary-Ann, for joining us here today.
Thank you for asking me. It's a pleasure.
Hmm. So, Mary-Ann, if we could just start off, please, a little background about yourself. Where were you born?
I was born in Portage la Prairie, Manitoba, and I was whisked back home, and back home was at the Fairholme Hutterite colony, which is about a 30-minute drive from there. So some of the children at that time were born at home, and Hutterite midwives, we had some very good ones, but I was born at the hospital because sometimes mothers just wanted to get out and listen to the radio at the hospital. Get out of the community a bit and see something new and exciting.
So the discussion for today is about COVID-19 and how we're adapting personally and also on a cultural level. So when did you first start hearing about COVID-19, Mary-Ann?
Well, I heard about it right when, right at the beginning, because I watch the news, and as a former journalist, you're aware of things. But I think when it was really brought home to us is when we went to my nephew's wedding in Maple Creek, Saskatchewan. And it had snowed a lot, and it was a big storm, but we were hearing that things were getting quite serious, and the Prime Minister was addressing the country. And because it was at it was in a very rural area, we didn't get internet for the 3 or 4 hours we were at the wedding. But as we were coming back to the hotel, pardon me, it was in Medicine Hat, at the hotel in Medicine Hat, we heard that the Prime Minister was asking overseas Canadians to come home immediately because this was very serious. And we had our son, our only child, over Levi in Amsterdam taking his master's of law. So of course we got into action right away to get him a flight and to get him out. So it was, I think that really brought home the seriousness, and he was so shocked. He couldn't believe that we were demanding him to come home. And he hadn't quite finished his schooling, but indeed, then we brought him home. And then because he was from overseas, he was picked up by a friend who was a medic, and she brought him home, and both of them had to isolate across town. Thankfully, Levi's nan had just gone into a seniors living center, and her condo hadn't sold yet. So for 2 weeks, we just could give him groceries up the balcony, and we couldn't hug him, and we did all the things that you're supposed to do. But that really brought it home. Oh my goodness, this is serious.
Absolutely. And how have you since coped during the pandemic? What have you done in response to this threat that is with us even today?
Well, we took it seriously and really followed what the government guidelines was saying. But when Levi got home, because he only had his thesis left, thank God, so we spent those 2 weeks there. And then when he finally came home it was, I right away, I think it's my Hutterite background, the first thing we sat down and did was we said, okay, we need structure. How will our day go? You know, Dad is still going to the law office, it's shut, but he goes in and does the work and works on, Zoom and those kinds of things with the courts. And you're doing your thesis and I'm doing my writing. So all of us luckily had the same kind of agenda. So it decided, because the law office was mostly empty, because the staff had gone home, that he went with his father in the morning at 9 to do that, and I stayed home to do my writing. So it was, in that regard, we had a beautiful little structure. They came home for lunch, and then in the evening, you know, you still want to create something special, you know, because you can't just be watching TV all the time, you know, and especially with my Hutterite background, you know, we sing at night, we tell stories, we come up with something. So I made my husband one night, me one night, and then Levi one night, all had to come up with either a game, a challenge, or a story that we could tell, that, or you know, a memory. Like I would take a shoebox full of old photos and we'd look through them and do the remembrances. And the other nights we could crash and do a Netflix series. So we decided to try and reconnect. And because our son, he won a scholarship at age 16, and he's been gone for so many years, like he was in Europe 4.5 years, you know, reconnecting with you, with your child is very special, because now he's had a global education, and it's been really fun to hear his idealism, and his father, who is a former mayor and former member of parliament, and realism come together. And you know, they're playing chess, because they're both really good chess players, and arguing about this and that. But it's just almost like teaching each other, you know, Levi, what the world is going to be like, what his world seems to is going to be like. It's very different than ours. And I think it's very helpful to have these healthy discussions, so that you don't have this generation gap. So you all cheer for each other. So it's been a wonderful time to reconnect with each other, and we feel very thankful. So it's been quite full in spite of everything. We haven't been bored.
Oh, that sounds great. Well, you talked about some of the songs and games. Can you be a little more specific as to like what songs you're singing, or games that may recall your Hutterite heritage?
Hutterites don't usually play games, like card games are not allowed, but they do some in nowadays. Scrabble is a good one, or we like Rummy, because I can cheat. And I'm very competitive, but they're on to me. But I like a game where I can be a little bit sneaky. So, you know, I did quite well for a long time. So those were the kinds of Rummy, Scrabble, and something called slang. So they're very, very unusual words from all over the world, that slang words. And so we all have to come up with what that means, or what we make something up as what it means. And then there's the real definition. So you pass the book from person to person, everybody gets a chance. So whoever can convince people that their definition is right. And I'm proud to say that I am the undisputed champion.
Of course.
I love games I can win, so there. Yeah, but they're the chess champions. Okay, I'll give them that.
Well, I noticed in one of a recent Facebook post that you made during the pandemic, you had said that that Hutterites were well prepared for the pandemic because they had those centuries of sanitation and as you mentioned, structure. Could you maybe just comment a bit about that as well, please?
Yes. Hutterites are notoriously cleanly, and that's how we were able to escape pandemics. And Hutterite doctors would help with the pandemics, but they were fastidious about, even back 500 years ago, separating people and doing the sorts of quarantining that we're doing now, and hand washing. They had that a long time ago. And I think that has served them very well. But one of the things that I have really been working with the Hutterites on is to speak for themselves. You know, they sort of consider themselves the quiet of the land. But I tell them, and I tell the bishops, that's a very sweet slogan, but it doesn't work. When you don't explain who you are and what you believe, the problem is people make it up. And so I think every culture has a duty to explain themselves. for others to know this is why we dress the way we do, this is where we come from, to be transparent, because that helps us accept each other and get to know each other better. And so for the first time, I was very proud that before the pandemic broke out, we started, and when there was just, it was just starting up, I did Zoom conference calls with the 4 men from the different, groups of the Hutterites to deal with the media and to how to inform their people that this is serious, so that they can stay on the right track. And so we did faxes and press releases and all of that. And it went really, really well for quite a long time. But what happened is then, I think it came out of that terrible tragedy where those 3 girls drowned in southern Saskatchewan. And then the compassion and the cultural norm, which is other colonies make food and help, and then they had to look for the one girl for so long. It was hard not to hug each other and not to come together, because it was like 3 brothers all losing a daughter. The girls were 16, 17, 17. And so it was a tremendous tragedy that absolutely was like a fire through the hearts of Hutterite communities. But those communities were still quite fastidious about cleanliness. And so, but the coming together created a sense of wanting to do more of that. And yet everything was in place for them to stay apart. And then I think that what we have is in Hutterite culture is, say, there are 3 groups of Hutterites, and they are, it's just like, how can I describe it? I would go, there are the First Nations, there are the Métis, and there's the Inuit, all Indigenous, all Hutterites, but 3 different distinct groups, 3 distinct bishops. Okay, so we all have the same belief, but there's the really orthodox Hutterites with the large polka dots, and there's also the moderate Hutterites with the black headscarves or very tiny polka dots, but they belong to different bishops and different groups. The moderate bishop was very, very good, and in fact the drownings happened in the moderate colonies. The moderate bishop was very good about holding the line and making sure people followed the instruction of the government. But the bishop from the Orthodox, the more hardline Hutterites, felt differently and decided for his people to leave the committee. They were all on a committee together. And that created a sense of arrogance among his people. And they started going out and ignoring the government, ignoring what was being said. And guess what? They were the ones that ended up with COVID. And I was very proud as to how that response took place, because the moderate bishop and even the head of the committee that I was working with, the COVID safety committee of the Hutterites, I phoned him immediately and said, what is going on? Because I'd had calls that there was racism, there was bigotry, there was all of that. And I said, I want to know what the real story is. And he told me, he said, if we are being treated badly, we richly deserve it, some of us, because we did wrong. And it's not right to jeopardize not only our people's safety, but others' people's safety by going to clinics when there's nothing wrong. We just want to go to town. We just want to be frivolous about it. And so the moderate bishop wrote a beautiful letter, which I may quote from next time at the other Zoom call, to say that we have to own when we are bad. We have to own when we are breaking the law, because the law are to keep us safe, and it is against our spiritual values to not listen to what the government is telling us. And so they came down really hard on them, and they took it on the chin very well to say, if people are mad at us, they have every reason to be mad at us. Mind you, the racist comments are completely uncalled for. And I think that that is the biggest issue that we all struggle with. That if it's a Hutterite person, it's all Hutterites. We can't have some bad eggs. It's all Aboriginal. Somehow in these minority groups, one person defines them all. And that's where we really have to watch ourselves not to do that. We can fight back. We can say, you're breaking the law and I'm really, really upset at you, without being racist about it. And that's the important lesson in this.
Thank you for providing that deeper context, because you don't hear that side of the story.
Right.
And or the nuance within the religious structure of Hutterites. That's
right.
It's an important consideration. There has recently been a response from the safety committee that came out last Friday, um, asking people to be more compassionate or show more empathy. And for the most part, there are a lot of positive comments, but unfortunately, there have been a lot of firsthand accounts, as you mentioned, of not letting people into certain businesses, or avoiding them, or ostracizing them, and as you said, that's completely uncalled for.
Yes, exactly. But to their credit, and this is sort of the behind the scenes stuff that I think it's really important. The bishop does say, how will they know us apart? And they should know we have Christian values by our conduct. And our conduct is to be faithful to the government and our country, to be faithful to the rules and regulations that are set out, and not to make a bad name for ourselves by breaking the law. And that's on us. And so we have to take responsibility for when we do things that are not appropriate. But if we can somehow plead with people to be angry and sin not, go ahead and be angry at the rule breaker, but please don't use racial and derogatory comments because they're Hutterite or Aboriginal or Chinese or whatever they may be. Treat them as a human being still.
Yeah, maybe if I could share one of your really beautiful quotes that you have pinned on your Facebook wall that says, quote, "Our humanity is what we have in common, but our cultural heritage is a gift each of us is given at birth. And unless we embrace that gift and value the power it is meant to bring to our lives, we cannot realize our full potential." And I think, yeah, I thought that was a very powerful quote, and encompasses some of what you've been saying here too. How did you write that quote, or what was the background for that particular quote?
I think I came to it. When I wrote the book, I didn't, for the life of me, Joey, expect that I would be asked to speak, but thank God for my media background, I was somewhat comfortable in being able to make my case for whatever. But, it just actually, it was the immigrants that lined up after my talking, after I would speak someplace, to say, we were from Italy and we had so much dark hair and they called us monkeys, or the Ukrainian that would say, we had these garlic sausages in our sandwiches and they smelled terrible and everybody made fun of us. It was the immigrants that really, really my story resonated with. And that one time when somebody was asked me something, had asked some questions at the end, it just flowed out of my mouth and I just said, I think that's quotable. So it kind of just was a culmination of everything I had heard leading up to it, and being told by so many immigrants that my story had touched them so deeply that it just felt, it just came out. But I believe it more today than ever.
It's really beautiful. In your latest book, Secrets of a Hutterite Kitchen, you explore how food is tied to culture and heritage. Has that been present during the pandemic for you as well? Some of the old recipes or or techniques that you remember as a child?
Yes, absolutely. The cottage cheese pies. And of course, a lot of Hutterites are on WhatsApp. So they send me pictures of what's being made in the community kitchen. And of course, I'm getting all the information as to how they miss eating in the community, and food is being taken to the members. And they all have a speaker system in the home. So the church service is pumped into each home. And, they feel terribly lonely for each other's company, and so it's been really fun. But what I've enjoyed most of all is they send me over WhatsApp some of our German songs. Bis hierher hat uns Gott gebracht, all of these beautiful songs that I was raised, and then I sing them. It's part of the way I keep my voice intact, because I do, I do sing at the Anglican church, or sometimes at a little jazz festival, so it's a different kind of music. But to keep my voice the way I think it's supposed to be, I have to sing my German songs as well. And so that's been precious, them sending me, because we have morning songs and we have evening songs, we have wedding songs, and we have funeral songs. So I'm getting those to, if there's a funeral somewhere, I get the link to the funeral song. And so that's really, really precious. And here at home, I did make some cottage cheese pie and some sugar pie, and we have put on a little weight. But you've got to have those tastes and moments in your life.
Well, I guess now, just thinking ahead, what do you think will be some of the memories that really stick out for you during this pandemic? Of course, you mentioned your son Levi. I'm sure that'll be foremost on your mind, but some other memories of this pandemic so far.
I think that is, of course, as you said, Levi is top memory for reconnecting as a family, because he's going to be out in the workforce very soon, and who knows where he'll end up. But I think that it's given us pause. Prior to that, we're so busy, we all have our thing going, and all of a sudden, everything changes overnight. And I think it's something that we're thinking about. What do I value? What's important to me? What's happening in this world? Because it will never be the same as before. And I think it's those connections as people that are, and I think even with it coming on the heels of Black Lives Matter, COVID, the chaos in the United States, the Confederate symbols being taken down, it's almost like the chickens have come home to roost. It's the sins of the fathers all being loaded down on us. It's a collective, we're breaking down. And how it could be our greatest tragedy or the greatest moment where we could heal and find that hate is unacceptable in life. We must accept each other. We must care about each other. We don't have to understand each other completely, but we all tumbled from the womb of God, and we were all given little gifts. And that is who we are, and nobody has the right to tell us that that is inferior. And so I think this is a beautiful opportunity, and it's a beautiful chance in a moment if we have the courage to grab it and run with it.
Well, what a beautiful note to end on, and I'm so glad that this will live on in the Saskatchewan archives as well. So thank you, Mary-Ann, and I really look forward to our discussion next week as well, during that forum, and let's talk again soon so we can collaborate more and talk about our shared humanity.
That sounds wonderful, Joey. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I very much look forward to next week. And I'll, keep me posted, because I'd like to be well prepped for it. And I really think it's wonderful when we get to know each other, when we talk together and we hear our stories. That's the way forward. Yeah.
Have a great day, Mary-Ann.
Oh, okay. Thank you, my dear, and talk to you soon.
Okay, very good. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks
Bye-bye
so much.
now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.